All right, well, hi everyone. Thanks so much for having me here. As you know, I'm Diane, and I'm an AI interaction designer at x.ai. So let's get right into it. So x.ai, we're building two scheduling assistants, Amy and Andrew Ingram. And how this works is basically if you're trying to meet up with somebody, you don't want to have to go through that pain of emailing back and forth about like where you want to meet, like what time of day, all of those preferences that you have to think about when you're setting up a meeting. We handle all of that for you. So basically how it works is say you wanted to meet up with your friend for coffee next week. How you might go about this on your own, scheduling it manually, might be opening up your calendar, seeing what your availability looks like over the next 2 weeks, if you have any like location preferences or other personal appointments that you already have. Taking all of that information and translating it into an email that is human readable to your friend, and that would sort of trigger that email exchange back and forth about, oh, I can only meet in Brooklyn on Tuesday mornings, or I'm only available for coffee every Thursday afternoon and Friday. Like, who knows? Everyone has all these random preferences that they have on their calendar, right? Um, and you'll email back and forth, and then eventually you'll get a time on the calendar, right? So I'm pretty sure all of us here are familiar with how painful this can actually be. And depending on the type of role that you're in, you're doing this multiple times a week, whether it's for work or networking or just personal appointments that you have on your calendar. So much of our time gets sucked up in scheduling, and nobody wants to do that. So at x.ai, the solution that we've sort of brought is rather than you having to go to some other interface and click on these availabilities like those Calendly or Doodle Me apps out there, you would just hand off that task entirely to Amy or Andrew, our automated assistants. So what we've been working on for the last 4 years is this extremely focused problem of scheduling meetings. And in a way, we like to call it like an invisible interface or this invisible conversational interface. The reason we say it's invisible is it's all happening over email. There's nothing for you to go in and log in or download an app or anything like that. So in many ways, you're just shooting off a request and getting your end result, in this case, an invite in your inbox. And what we found over the last 4 years is that this is a very difficult problem and a very difficult design challenge to get around. And it sort of brings me to the topic for today, which is this idea of these perceived errors. So I'm going to go into more depth, but it's basically the idea of when you're going from just a simple request to your end result, you're missing all of that like intermediary micro steps or interactions or communication touch points that you might have in a traditional like graphical user interface. So let's get started. All right. So this type of screen and interaction is something that we're all pretty familiar with, right? If you want to go into Photoshop and crop one of your images, you'll go and set your pixel width, all the ratio, rotate it slightly, do all of that very specifically before you get this additional pop-up of, oh, are you sure you want to crop this? Like, are you really sure you want to crop this? And this is basically what all of our technology has looked like for the last few decades, right? The user has a lot of control over every single step. And in addition to having control, they have visibility of like what is presented to you and what will happen after you take a certain action. And what's interesting is as we're moving into these new types of products that we might call intelligent or are automating some of these tasks for us, you actually end up skipping a lot of those micro interactions or the intermediary steps, right? So to go back to this cropping example, you'll find that a lot of photo editing softwares will now have a simple auto crop button where all you have to do is click that button and you sort of have this trust or some other part of you that believes, okay, this software knows what it's doing. I'm just going to let it crop this image for me, right? And if you sort of look at what this interaction is mapping out to be, in the very first one, which I'll just call like a manual crop, you have to go in, put in your initial request, decide that you're going to crop this thing, and then pick or select in a drop-down or however this GUI is working, confirm, confirm again, all of these steps that we're used to, and then you'll end up with your cropped image. Whereas in the second, like auto crop button, all you did was press one button, you got your result. So we can see why this second interaction is sort of the future and something that we're all interested in here, of how we can automate all of these boring tasks that no one wants to do, right? So this sort of sets the framework for this whole idea of a perceived error. So what do I mean when I say perceived error? So just like in that auto crop example, once you put in your initial request, in some cases, say when the software is actually making some of those decisions for you without you being there every step of the way to control and have visibility into it, you might get an unexpected but ultimately agreeable result. So I know that this is kind of abstract. So to give a better, more concrete example of this, say in the future, I'm talking to my restaurant booking robot. This is hypothetical because I don't have one right now. But say I'm talking to it and I'm saying, oh, can you book me for dinner Wednesday night at La Superior for tacos? And then it comes back to me and says, hey Diane, okay, I've booked a reservation for you at Taco King or something like that. At first I might be like, wait, that's weird. I asked for La Superior. This is a bug, like something went wrong here. But then it goes on to explain sort of the decision-making process that got it there. So it might come back and say, okay, I've booked you for Taco King. Unfortunately, I couldn't find any availability at La Superior. It's booked all week, but here's the next best thing I found. I've already gone ahead and booked that for you. Let me know if you want me to change anything. So in a lot of ways, it's a few steps ahead of you. It could have come back and been like, oh, La Superior is booked. What do you want me to do? But it actually just did that for you, saving you even more time or like mental space to have to then instruct it to do that. So this whole idea of a perceived error is sort of that mismatch between your expectation of what you think it should do versus what it actually came out to be. But in a lot of ways, these errors are not actually errors. It's just different from what you had originally instructed. So this is something that we've come into a lot with Amy and Andrew. It's really interesting to see like how many different ways that people will go about scheduling their meetings. Everyone has like really different ways of doing it. So obviously they'll have different expectations for how Amy and Andrew should handle those constraints as well. So I'll go into some of the examples that we've run into. So in this case, say that I'm wanting to get coffee with my friend Tanya on Wednesday. So I reached out to Amy and Tanya saying, hey Tanya, looking forward to getting together. Wednesday is my preferred time. Amy will help us get this on the calendar. And shortly after, I'll get an invite. But the weird thing is it's not for Wednesday, it's for Thursday. So at first I might be like, well, this is weird. Amy, I asked this to be Wednesday. But once I actually go and dig a bit deeper, look at the correspondence between Tanya and Amy, I could see that, oh, Tanya's actually out of town. There's no way she could have met on Wednesday. So Amy, rather than like stopping and not scheduling the meeting because it can't happen on a Wednesday, she goes and does the next best thing, in our opinion, is just schedule it for the next available time. So this is like one clear example where a lot of our users might come into this and think, oh wait, she's broken, and report like, oh, there's a bug. But really, she was actually taking like the next steps ahead. She just hadn't communicated that to you yet. Another example that we run into a lot is when Amy and Andrew might schedule outside of your preferences. So we have this internal concept that we've taught Amy and Andrew about scheduling hours. So if you have x.ai, you can go in and be like, okay, I only take my calls from these hours, or I like coffee only on these days. And most of the time, we will respect those hours that you've set. But in a lot of ways, it just comes down to these product decisions of trading off, okay, like ultimately their goal is to get the meeting scheduled. We're going to do our best, like no matter how much we might have to tweak outside of people's preferred hours to get that on the calendar. So in this case, I'm reaching out to Mariam to talk about this event. And I say, hey Amy, or hey Mariam, looking forward to speaking with you. Amy will find a time for us. And Amy ends up scheduling this for 9 a.m. So I know for most people that might be a normal time to have a call. But for us who work in tech or at startups, it's a little bit on the early side. So I might be like, Amy, why'd you schedule me for 9 a.m.? I have my hours for calls from 10. But what she'll do is come back with this type of response of, hi Diane, just so you're aware, this is slightly outside of your regular scheduling hours. Unfortunately, I was unable to find any times within your preferences. If you want me to stay within your hours, feel free to send me an additional time. For now, I'll send this out for 9 a.m. So what we're doing here is, in addition to taking that extra step without you necessarily having to ask us to do that, we're informing you as the user of what we're doing and why we're doing it and how you can tell us to course correct if need be. So yeah, this is like one of the main learnings that we've found as we had to deal with these perceived errors that people keep running into, of having to err on the side of over-communicating if we think that anyone is going to be confused at all of what is happening. So another example is we started to include these meeting echo emails. So in a way, this is almost like a receipt of what Amy has understood when you first shoot off an email to schedule a meeting. So for those who have been working in natural language processing, we all know that we're nowhere near being perfect right now, just as an industry. So this sort of email gives our users a lot of comfort and trust in knowing that Amy has understood what they've told her, and if she hasn't, then it gives them an opportunity to sort of tweak the message and send her more information to course correct. Sorry. So if you, go back to this original sort of mapping out of the experience, what we've learned is it's really difficult to find that happy medium between forcing your users to have to go through all of these steps on their own, because that's not the idea of our product. We're trying to relieve that from you, but at the same time, communicating as much as we can when relevant so that you're aware of how Amy's thinking about these problems, know for sure that she's working on it the way that you have expected her to, and just for general transparency and reliability for you to sort of build trust with Amy and Andrew, your scheduling assistants. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.